Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Month of the Full Moon here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm checking out a film from 1994. That movie is Trancers 4, Jack of Swords. Now, unlike the three previous Trancers films, which dealt with Trancer hunter Jack Deth dealing with Trancers in modern-day Los Angeles, this one, as per the sequel hook at the end of Trancers 3, now has Jack as an intergalactic, interplanetary, and interdimensional Trancer hunter. So now he's in a whole new dimension or a whole new planet. The back of the DVD case is kind of vague on that, where Jack Deth is now hunting a new kind of Trancer, which is probably good because I was kind of tired with the, oh, it's drugs, oh, it's a psychic cult leader, reasons for Trancers being Trancers shit we had to deal with in the first three. Hopefully with this new kind of Trancer will be a whole new set of rules as to how people become Trancers, and maybe, hopefully, it'll make a little bit more sense. I have no idea, though, and I have no clue if this movie is going to be any good. The only way I'm going to find out is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Trancers 4, Jack of Swords. So let me see if I've got this straight. They set up Shark to be Jack's sidekick in these movies. They spent the whole of Trancers 3 setting him up. Now, not 5 minutes into this one, Shark is dead. That kind of sucks, man. I mean, as dull as Shark was for most of his time in Trancers 3, I was starting to like him towards the end. I was looking forward to him being in the sequels. This actually is a little bit of a letdown, man. So, these new kinds of Trancers, they're literally just vampires. Honest to God, guys, that is all they fucking are. I've seen two of them feed. They feed exactly like... They basically are just energy vampires. Feels kind of lame. Feels incredibly lame. Hoping, though, that this film can do something interesting with it. So, apparently, when he traveled to this alternate dimension, I guess we can call it, the fast second watch that Jack was given works in reverse here. So now instead of 1 second of our time taking 10 seconds for him, it's reverse. And it looks incredibly fucking stupid. It doesn't help that Tim fucking Thomerson also has to sound like his voice is slowed down as he's moving like this. I guess the whole thing is supposed to be funny, but really fucking isn't. You wanna know what I find really shocking, guys, about this whole film? I was so used to the previous films where the entire cast at least was putting in some level of effort, and Thomerson was kind of sort of towering over everybody just simply because of his cheesy awesomeness. Now we have Thomerson turning in his normal level of cheese. Nobody else is even fucking trying, and god damn it, it's making this movie incredibly difficult to fucking watch. If even one other actor in this movie, or say at least if one of the regular actors in this movie put in even a modicum of effort, this would probably be a little bit more watchable. But right now, as it stands, this movie's fucking torturous, man. Well, guys, now we're up to the big final fucking fight, and you know, I'm just looking at the fact that there's just under 10 minutes left. And I have a feeling that these are going to be the slowest 10 minutes in the history of cinema. This movie sucks. And the sooner that I see credits, the happier I'm going to be. Well, guys, that was Trancers 4, Jack of Swords. Holy shit. God damn. Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh my god. That was not what I was expecting. Well, I can totally say that the ending sucked, but then again, so did everything else in this movie. Why don't I start with the writing? I had high hopes, guys. I had probably higher hopes than I really should have had any right to going into this. When I saw the screenwriter's credit on this film, this movie is written by Peter David. Peter David, the legendary comic book writer. Peter David, the man who made the Hulk readable. Peter David. I was hoping we would see some of that. We would see some of that fantastic Peter David style writing here, and we don't. At all. There's nothing here that even feels like something that Peter David would have penned. Part of that has to do with the fact that Peter David goes to great lengths to make sure that his characters are deep, his characters are well thought out, that everything is well thought out in terms of story and all of that. Peter fucking David, guys, is a freaking artist when it comes to writing. He makes sure that every single detail is in place. This feels like it started out as a Peter David script, and then someone at some point decided to take a hacksaw to the fucking thing and remove all of the character depth and characterization and anything that could have been seen as interesting, leaving us with an hour and 10 minutes of dull, boring fantasy horse shit with Jack fucking Deth just sort of shoehorned in there. Speaking of Jack Deth being shoehorned in there, I kind of have a feeling that this movie started off not as a Trancers film, but as probably a whole new Full Moon franchise involving energy-sucking vampires in a fantasy world. I have that feeling because there's almost no mention of Trancers at all outside of, Jack calls the fucking nobles Trancers almost every time he references them. I think maybe one other character calls them Trancers once across this whole film. Otherwise, they are always referred to as vampires or nobles. Nobles being the more common term. So it tells me, again, this is, and plus also the stuff that was said in the future that was sort of giving Jack the reason to come back, or rather the reason for Jack to be launched into this alternate fucking universe, which even that, guys, when I read that on the back of the DVD case, that sounded really fucked up because the sequel hook at the end of 3 was that Jack was just supposed to travel up and down the time. He was gonna travel up and down the fucking timeline to make sure that shit stays, that shit stays right. He basically was a time cop. That was sort of the whole thing. And then there's something that happens with his fucking time machine, launches him into this alternate world of energy fucking vampires in a, really cheap looking fantasy setting. And it really does feel as if Jack Deth was just dumped into a script that had no place for him, and he's just sort of forced in there. Because you could literally have cut Jack out of this movie, and you could have replaced him with basically just a random character who was already established in the world, and you wouldn't have changed shit. You'd probably have to swap out Jack's gun for a fucking sword at the very end. It would be just like a laser firing sword or some such shit. But still, it really doesn't feel like a Trancers film, and I really don't think that Peter David went out of his way to write a Trancers script. It literally feels that like forced. Everything with trancing and everything with Jack, it all feels so painfully forced that I absolutely refuse to believe that Peter David, when he first put pen to paper, or when he first put his hands on that fucking typewriter or that keyboard, decided he was going to make a Trancers script. He obviously didn't. So I always have to call out a film when it does this, guys. When it feels like it started out as something else, and then some jerk off somewhere decided that it had to become a part of a franchise that it had no business being a part of. The only time that has ever worked, I should mention, was Saw 2. Saw 2 started off as a completely unfucking fucking like related film. And the studio said, "No, fuck it, we are just going to make it Saw 2," and it worked. This didn't. Okay, now, beyond the whole, it doesn't feel like Trancers, because it obviously wasn't Trancers. What is here, though, still feels incredibly weak, and I'm not going to blame that on the writing. I cannot blame that on Peter fucking David, because I am convinced that whatever fucking script he penned, it was something decent, and that someone, I don't know if it was the director, I don't know if it was the editor, I don't know if it was the producers, somebody took a fucking blowtorch to that fucking script and cut everything out that would have possibly given any of these characters depth. So we're left with a bunch of lifeless, worthless characters. Oh, one other thing I can say that kind of sort of ties into the whole this probably wasn't thought out as a Trancers film at first, is the fact that Jack Deth is painfully out of character throughout the entire fucking movie. He does not talk like Jack Deth. He doesn't act like Jack Deth. Whoever the hell wrote that part of the script, and if it actually was David being forced to shoehorn in Jack and all of the Trancer stuff, he went to great lengths to make sure it didn't feel like Jack. It didn't feel like Jack Deth, probably in hopes that they wouldn't take his script and turn it into a fucking Trancers film. And they wound up doing it, anyway. It feels so terribly out of character for Jack. The whole thing with calling these fucking nobles Trancers, that seriously feels fucking wrong. Because they aren't Trancers. They are in no way even related to Trancers. They're fucking energy vampires. And that would probably have made for a rather interesting story if the characters had any depth to them. So whoever the fuck was ripping pages wholesale out of this goddamn script should be fucking ashamed. I could probably bang on guys about fucking writing all goddamn day. But I honestly can tell you that this fucking script is shallow, it's hollow, and it's empty, and I really don't think that is what Peter David turned in, because I know that Peter David can do fucking better. Okay? Just putting that out there straight away. Acting. Well, I already knew that Thomerson was going to turn in something decent, because Thomerson always does. Even seriously when handed a shitty script, as he was with Dollman vs. Demonic Toys, he at least tried, and he at least put in some level of effort to make it interesting. Here, he still fucking tries, but you can totally see it on his face. He does not want to fucking be there. I'm going to assume that Thomerson hated this script as much as I hated the final fucking product. I mean, he absolutely does not want to be there, and even though vocally he sounds like he's trying, facially, he's not. He has this permanent scowl of someone who just absolutely loathes being where he fucking is. And that does kind of sort of pull the viewer out a little bit. It seriously does. So Thomerson tried, but unfortunately you can tell just by looking in his eyes he does not want to be there. The only other actor who I had any hopes on, because it's the only other actor I actually know by name, is Alan Oppenheimer. And for those of you who don't know who he is, Alan Oppenheimer was a voice actor in the 1980s. He worked on shows like Transformers and G.I. Joe, and everything that Filmation made in the 1980s. And I do quite literally mean everything. I'm talking everything from Ghostbusters to Brave Star to He-Man to She-Ra. He was in all of them. I had hopes that Oppenheimer would be bringing the kind of acting he brought to He-Man and Transformers and G.I. Joe, and he didn't. Oppenheimer also looks like he's incredibly bored being there. But then again, he also is in the film for maybe all of about 4, maybe 5 minutes. So, and honest to God, he seriously is just a walking plot fucking point. He basically is a soothsayer who basically drew a picture of Jack Deth holding his fucking gun straight up, the way that most fantasy characters would hold up a sword as it gets struck by lightning. Again, I'm going to say that actually is another one of those little tip-offs that this probably was not a Trancers film, and that even the script was probably calling for a sword instead of a fucking gun up here. He's literally there to show off that and say, Jack, it is your destiny to do that. And if you doubt the power of a wizard, you are a fucking dead man. That's literally all that he's there for. He is literally there to do those two things and then die. Spoiler alert. So he honestly was not trying as much as I had hoped. And the rest of the cast, holy mother of fuck, the rest of the cast. I have seen some bad acting in my time. I have seen some wooden acting in my time. Never in my life have I seen a cast who, and I'm talking, again, minus those two actors, everybody else is so blitheringly lifeless that it almost renders this movie unwatchable. There is not a single actor who puts in any level of effort. Every single actor, when they have to look at another actor, or God fucking forbid that they have to look at the camera, that they actually have to spike the fucking camera, they have this absolutely dead-eyed fucking stare, as if they have no clue why the fuck they are there. They have no idea what the hell they are doing. Most of them even sound like they've never read the script until 30 seconds prior to going over to their fucking mark. It's terrible. The acting in this thing, guys, is probably the biggest sin. Because honestly, I can totally deal with Jack fucking Deth in a fucking fantasy world that was never written for Jack Deth. I could totally deal with that. But the fact that the rest of the cast is this lifeless and this shit, it absolutely renders this movie painful to fucking watch. Holy shit. Okay. Special effects. What is there to really say about special effects? Well, a lot of the special effects here, at least, are kind of passable. The one thing I do have to comment on, which was total shit, and it's something which I've noticed has been on a very gradual slope ever since the first Trancers film, is the Trancer makeup, or in this case, the noble makeup, because apparently when you are low on life force and you have to feed, they basically add on this makeup, which is supposed to make you look all ghoulish. The only thing it really does is it basically gives you this really massive forehead fucking ridge and gives you, like, wrinkles right here. That's it. That is it for makeup effects. I happen to remember when Trancers looked like fucking zombies, you know? Because that's basically what Trancers were, is they were basically either drugged up or psychically controlled zombies. Now they're fucking energy vampires, and the makeup is terrible. The makeup is cheap and shit, and it is barely noticeable with the ultra fuzzy video I wound up with on these fucking DVDs, and I have no idea if that is because the movie itself is naturally that fuzzy, or if it's just because the master on the disc is shit. I have no fucking clue there. But yeah, the makeup here is shit. Blood. Okay, I'm talking like blood, gore, cuts. What very little of all of that we see is fine. Probably the best one is when one character when he basically gets, like, slashed in the face, and he then turns towards the camera, and you can see the makeup effect on the cut. That actually looked really good. And what few fucking lighting effects, lasers, and the one noble who actually singes like a fucking trancer, are done fairly decent. Oh, and also the very end when we see, I guess, technically another singeing, but I'm not going to count that one, because it wasn't the traditional Trancer singeing, plus he's not technically dead because he's a wizard and wizards don't die, all this other stupid horse shit. All of that is fine. But you see, that also something which Full Moon does, and does very well. I would have been stunned if that would have sucked. Our sound mix here is fine. Our fucking score is okay. Picture, well, I've already talked about the picture. It is, like, stupidly fuzzy, and I have no clue why. Our sets are some of the most low-rent fantasy sets I think I have ever seen. I want you to imagine if somebody tried to make, like, say, like, Lord of the Rings or fucking Game of Thrones on, like, a $200 budget, and you now know what the sets look like in this thing. Ultimately, guys, am I able to recommend Trancers 4, Jack of Swords? No. Hell, fuck, no. My God. Okay, correction. I guess I can kind of sort of recommend it. If you are a fan of most fantasy films, I'm talking movies such as, things such as Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all of that kind of stuff. If that honestly is your sort of thing and your standards are really, really low and you just basically want to see a corny, stupid fantasy film, which also features a gun-toting, foul-mouthed cop who's searching for Trancers, and also has energy vampires who are called Trancers for some goofy-ass reason, then by all means check it out. However, I do have to warn you that there really is not much here, and the most that you might be able to get out of the thing is a fucking laugh. And even then, you're probably not going to do a whole hell of a lot of laughing. So yeah, that honestly is the only way I can possibly recommend it is if you're a fan of fantasy films and you want to see a really cheesy kind of shit fantasy film. Beyond that, there is no earthly way I could ever possibly recommend this thing because it is that goddamn dull. Now, Trancers 4, as well as the other 4 that were in this set, all came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in is a YouTuber by the name of the Expatriate 700. Dude, I do totally want to thank you. I was certainly curious about these. I still have to check out Trancers 5, which is a direct sequel to this one, and my hopes are not that high, but I am going to still watch it, because why not? Please, guys, swing on over to his YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/user/the Expatriate 700. Check out anything and everything that he has. Once more, dude, I thank you. I was really curious about that. I wouldn't have had any idea if this or any of the other Trancers films were any good if you hadn't sent in, if you hadn't sent in the set, and for that I do totally thank you. You fucking rock. You know what, guys? I am gonna go find something else in my fucking Blu-ray collection. I do not know what. I don't care what. I need to go watch something good after watching this horrific goddamn thing. So anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.